Hello, my name is Abdulaziz Alugo. I'm here to present the topic cost-benefit analysis of moving target defense in power grids. I'm a student of Georgia Tech University in the online master's degree of computer science CS 6263 summer of 2019. The paper I'm presenting was originally written by the duo of Subhash Lakshmi Narayana from Advanced Digital Sciences Center, Illinois at Singapore, and David K.Y. Yao from Singapore University of Technology and Design, Singapore. This paper was originally presented at the IEEE IFIP Dependable Systems and Networks Conference, June 2018 in Luxembourg. This presentation would contain the abstract from the paper, introduction from the paper, prior work as explained by the authors, moving target defense in power grids as explained by the author, MTD's effectiveness of active detection, moving target defense's cost-benefit trade-off, and the conclusions by the authors. We study moving target defense that actively perturbs transmission line reactances to thwart stealthy false data injection attacks against state estimation in a power grid. Prior work on this topic has proposed moving target defense based on randomly selected reactance perturbations, but these perturbations cannot guarantee effective attack detection. To address the issue, we present formal design criteria to select moving target defense reactance perturbations that are truly effective. However, based on a key optimal power flow formulation, we find that the effective moving target defense may incur a non-trivial operational cost that has not hitherto received attention. Accordingly, we characterize important trade-offs between the moving target defense's detection capability and its associated required cost. Extensive simulations using the MATPower simulator and the benchmark IEEE bus systems verify and illustrate the proposed design approach that for the first time addresses both key aspects of cost and effectiveness of the moving target defense. Introduction. Cyber attacks against critical infrastructures can lead to severe disruptions. An example is the December 2015 attack against Ukraine's power grid, which caused power disruption to residents for a few hours. These attacks were typically crafted by sophisticated attackers and state actors who managed to spend considerable time inside a system to learn its operational details and accordingly designed the injection of malicious data control to disrupt its operations. To prevent such attacks, it is imperative to design counteracting defense approaches to defeat sophisticated attackers. It should be noted that such attacks can have considerable effect and can have come at a considerable cost to the country or to the company that such attack is played against. Moving target defense is based on dynamically changing the system parameters that attackers need to target for customizing their attacks in order to invalidate the attacker's prior knowledge of the system and render ineffective any of their prior design strategies. In this paper, we focus on false data injection attacks against state estimation in power grids. State estimation is a key method for grid operators to obtain a best estimate of the system state from noisy sensor measurements collected via a supervisory control and data acquisition system. Its output is used in critical applications such as economic dispatch and contingency analysis by the power companies. A bad data detector associated with the state estimate is often deployed for identifying bad data to ensure trustworthy results. However, False data injection attacks crafted using detailed knowledge of a power grid's topology and the reactance settings of its transmission lines can bypass the BDD, the bad data detector, and remain stealthy. Such an undetected attack can have severe consequences, can cause the tripping of transmission line breakers, or can cause unsafe frequency excursions. To strengthen the bad data detector, it has been shown that if a carefully chosen subset of the sensors can be well protected, can be made tamper-proof or can be encryption enabled, or if a key subset of the state variables can be independently and reliably verified by phasor measurement units, PMUs, deployed at strategically chosen locations, then a bad data detector bypassing false data injection attack becomes impossible. However, a major revamp of the basic sensing infrastructure can be quite expensive or infeasible for the many existing legacy systems whose life cycle often lasts decades and which are not expected to retire for the foreseeable future. Alternatively, false data injection attacks can be significantly mitigated by moving target defenses that invalidate the knowledge attackers used for crafting their prior attacks, specifically by active perturbation of the grid's transmission line reactance settings in our application context. This approach is practical because of current DFAC devices capable of active impedance injection. Because of their low cost and ease and flexibility of deployment, they are being increasingly installed in existing alternating current transmission networks to control power flows. Prior work on moving target defenses for false data injection attacks against power grid state estimate has two important limitations which are related. First, the moving target defense is implemented by selecting a random subset of transmission lines and introducing similarly random perturbations to their reactance settings. This does not guarantee that a bad actor who's resident on the system cannot, get enough data to craft an attack. Secondly, without an adequate characterization of effective moving target defense, prior work has not been able to address explicitly the associated cost involved. Rather, it is assumed that the moving target defense can be always constrained to have negligible or some low enough operational cost. However, moving target defense designed with any absolute cost constraint will not be useful if the moving target defense does not perform. It is thus critical to understand the inherent cost-benefit trade-off of the moving target defense to accordingly inform system operators in their choice of security policies, which is a key objective of this paper. The illustration above shows an attacker in the middle of a network, a communication network between a control center operated by a system operator and a physical plant. This actor we consider a strong attacker who has access to the measurement data communicated between the field devices and the control center. Such access could be obtained by exploiting vulnerabilities in power grid communication systems that are IP accessible. We also assume that the attacker can learn the system's measurement matrix using the eavesdropped measurements and craft undetectable false data injection attacks accordingly. Under the moving target defense, the defender tries to thwart the FDI attacks by actively perturbing the transmission line reactances to invalidate the attacker's prior knowledge. Note that the power system under consideration is naturally dynamic, even without moving target defenses. since the branch reactances are optimized periodically to reflect temporal changes in the system load. However, these natural changes are usually insufficient for effectively negating the attacker's knowledge. Thus, the defender deliberately introduces an additional reactance perturbation to ensure the moving target defense's detection capability. The defender implements the moving target defense reactance perturbations by sending moving target defense control commands to the remote DFAC devices in the grid. Now, unlike the sensor measurements that support the grid's normal operations, these commands are much less frequent and do not have stringent real-time constraints. Hence, we assume that it is feasible to encrypt the moving target defense commands to ensure their confidentiality. We note, however, that although the attacker cannot read the moving target defense commands directly due to their encryption, in principle, it may still infer the MTD perturbations by monitoring their effects on the eavesdropped sensor measurements and estimating the new measurement matrix accordingly. In practice, however, the learning will be time-consuming since the attacker must collect an informative sequence of the measurements over a significant duration of time. In one of the experiments by the authors, they tested and found that in some cases the attacker would need to take over 1,000 samples to be able to craft an attack when the reactances are varied, and that's how they came to the conclusion that it will be impracticable in the real sense, to spend so much time gathering that data to make enough sense to craft an attack. In this paper, we assume that the time interval between the moving target defense perturbations is sufficiently small so that during it the attacker's gain in knowledge is negligible. What is the moving target defense's effectiveness of attack detection? In this section, we address the problem of selecting effective moving target defense reactance perturbations from an attack detection point of view. The goal is to select reactance perturbations within the physical constraint of the DFAC devices to effectively invalidate the attacker's knowledge for bypassing the bad data detector. An ideal moving target defense is one that admits no undetectable attacks of the form A is equal to H subset T C. The illustrations above shows the column that shows two columns. One column representing the attack, which is H subset T, and the other column representing the moving target defense, which is H prime T prime, H prime subset T prime. So the first one shows where the MTD totally covers the attack vector. The second one shows where the MTD is skews away from the attack vector, and the third one shows where the MTD is perpendicular to the attack vector. So we say theorem 1. An MTD, moving target defense, H prime subset T prime, has no undetectable attack of the form A is equal to H subset TC if the column of the MTD is the orthogonal complement of the column of H subset T. Furthermore, for a given attack vector A, for a given attack vector A, such an MTD achieves the maximum value of P prime subset D A among all the possible moving target defense perturbations. MTD's cost-benefit trade-off. We've discussed earlier how implementing the moving target defense that totally covers the attack vector, that totally prevents the attacker from crafting a suitable attack for the system by varying the perturbance of the reactants in the transmission line, would have a high cost effect on the system. We're now going to analyze what the trade-off would be in terms of cost. In the presentation, in the paper, the authors actually compared the cost of putting in place this the most effective moving target defense. They compared it to getting insurance, getting insurance, say on any item, say home insurance or rental insurance, where indeed what you're insuring against might never happen, but you still pay for insurance every month. So in case it actually happens, that the insurance, the premium that you've been paying would cover for any loss that might be incurred. So they compared that to what it means to incur the extra cost you're going to incur if you implement the MTD as against facing an attack and letting the attack persist, and the cost that would be if you don't have that the MTD insurance. So following the above arguments, we note that the defender faces conflicting objectives. On the one hand, for the MTD to be effective from an attack detection point of view, the column spaces of the matrices H subset T and H prime subset T prime should be as orthogonal as possible. On the other hand, the moving target defense operational cost increases as you increase the the vector, the coverage increases, so does the operational cost increase. Thus, there exists a trade-off between the moving target defense's effectiveness and its operational cost. To balance the two aspects, we formulate the moving target defense reactant selection problem as a constrained optimization problem with the objective of minimizing the operational costs subject to a constraint on the moving target defense's effectiveness. So in essence, we're trying as much as possible to make sure that we still get the most out of what we have. We still, with the lowest costs to the system. So we still make sure that we have the best possible moving target defense in place, which again would still follow the model of varying the reactances, of varying the perturbance to the transmission lines to vary the reactances, but at as lowest a cost as possible. In conclusion, we addressed the problems of selecting moving target defense reactants perturbations that are truly effective in thwarting stealthy false data injection attacks against state estimates in power grids. We devised a novel metric to quantify the moving target defense's effectiveness and identified key design criteria to compute effective moving target defense perturbations in practice. We also showed that the effective moving target defense may incur a non-trivial operational cost, and provided analysis to expose the cost-benefit trade-off of the moving target defense in an OPF framework. Our result offers moving target defense to system operators as an insurance against possible false data injection attacks and minimizes the cost of such insurance subject to an effectiveness constraint.